Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 30th January 2021. In this video, we'll be dealing with this couple of issues. Himalayan maneuvers. This article is about the India-Nepal relations. Now, if we talk about Nepal, it is very important because we share geographical, historical, cultural linkages with this country for centuries together. Therefore, it is a very important neighbor of India and occupies a special significance in its foreign policy. India and Nepal share similar ties in terms of Hinduism and Buddhism. We also have Buddha's birthplace in Lumbini, which is located in the present day Nepal. The two countries not only share an open border and unhindered movement of people, but we also have a treaty of peace and friendship of 1950, and this has been the bedrock of special relations that existed between India and Nepal. In 2015, because of the economic blockade that India has resorted to with respect to Nepal, because of its inclination towards China, things have turned bitter. Ever since, India has been looked at as a antagonist in policy circles of Nepal, and the anti-India sentiment has been rising. Therefore, recently there was a constitutional crisis. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has dissolved the parliament and called for an election. And the recent involvement of Beijing in Nepal's internal issues has caused a concern that India will also be interfering in the internal issues of Nepal, and there were fears exhibited by certain policy experts with respect to Nepal that India will show a big brother attitude towards Nepal. That is to say, it will try to meddle with the affairs of the Nepalese politics. But India has done well to maintain their safe distance from the political issue that we see in Nepal at this moment. In fact, China has tried to settle this issue by reaching out to the warring factions in the Nepalese politics. The names are not really important from the perspective of UPSC exam, but the larger lesson that we have to learn. Even after intervention from the Communist Party of China, the Prime Minister Oli has not actually resorted to any step which indicates that he wants to go back on his decision. So there are two lessons that we have to learn from this entire experience. Firstly, it is surprising that both the factions are actually openly trying to communicate or establish contact with the Communist Party of China, and it is equally surprising that China is trying to interfere in the internal politics of a country. So there is every risk that China will be seen as a antagonist in this entire story, because there is already an existing fear due to the ongoing geostrategic convergence in the Indian Ocean region, where China has been resorting to checkbook diplomacy, or paying out to countries or pushing countries into debts and then making them obliged to the conditions laid down by China. There is always a fear with respect to Chinese intervention. It is surprising that China has actually openly admitted that it is involving in the internal politics of the country. India has in fact done better by not intervening, because this is not just about a few foreign factions or individuals. We are talking about institutions and the long term relations that we have to establish with the country itself. We have to understand that diplomatic relations are definitely influenced by the individuals, but individuals are never larger than the institutions themselves. So we have to safeguard that institutional integrity for maintaining further relations in the future. We might have another person occupying the same seat, so maintaining that safe distance and not intervening in a country's internal politics is in tune with the Panchashil principles laid down by our first Prime Minister, along with the other leaders of the non aligned movement. So, in this context, we respect other countries' sovereignty, and we are exhibiting the same attitude towards Nepal as well. and this is a positive situation. And we have already shown an intention that we don't want to meddle with the internal affairs, and we have learnt our lessons after the economic blockade episode, which has caused certain amount of damage when we look at the issue from a Nepalese point of view. Therefore, we can say that reciprocal treatment of Indian and Nepali citizens in the two countries, which has been the bedrock of a treaty of peace and friendship, should establish a national treatment for both Indian and Nepalese businesses in our country as well as in their territory. So, this ensures that the spirit of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship will continue even after this entire fiasco ends. So, that is the gist of this article. So, this article titled Tax Policy in Trying Times is about how our taxation system is skewed in the favor of those who are already earning well. Just to put things into context, the basic aspect of taxation is to collect money from taxpayers and redistribute it. So, this is the logic behind a welfare state. Now, in an extremely socialist state, private entities are severely constrained. On the other end of the spectrum is the capitalist regime, wherein the large companies are having a free run, where there is a almost tax free environment, like in the case of Dubai. India, because of the existing inequalities, cannot afford to be on any end of the spectrum. Therefore, in 1991, it has moved towards a mixed economy. Now, what is this mixed economy? This mixed economy model focuses on creating enough opportunities for the private sector, considering the fact that we have such a huge market for almost every product, because we are a population of nearly 140 crores right now. So, private entities existence is must in our country, because the government cannot deliver almost every good. In this context, we also have another conundrum in the form of balancing between the haves and have nots. India has some of the largest inequalities in the world, because a latest Oxfam report has said that 1% of Indians own almost 50% of the wealth, or 50 to 60%. In this context, the rest 99% are severely constrained because of lack of resources, and a significant aspect of this fall amongst the middle class, and the rest of the crowd have very dilapidated conditions, where even in some cases extreme poverty situations are also seen. So, given this setup, how should be the taxation policy? As soon as the pandemic has stuck the economy across the countries, a lot of European countries, especially like Germany, have shelled out a huge amount of their GDP as cash directly into the hands of people. So, this is to ensure that they pass through this pandemic. People who have lost jobs can compensate for the lost jobs through this period of pandemic during lockdowns. So, India was also expected to take up certain measures like that. We did give out certain cash benefits, but only to a limited extent because of our constrained financial resources. So, the other end of the logic was the government wanted to create an environment which is conducive for carrying out business in our country, which will create jobs. Now, the debate was between, is the priority to favor the MNCs, or we have to put money directly into the hands of the poor, because these poor are the most vulnerable. Ideally, MNCs are expected to give jobs and empower people and pull them out of poverty. So, when poor people get jobs, they will definitely come out of poverty and their situations would change. This is a long term change. But what about the short term? They have lost their livelihood because of the lockdown. A lot of migrants have gone back to their places. And to compensate for this, the government announced that it would be giving out free food grains. But this was simply not sufficient, because we don't have enough data with respect to migrants. So, There have been subsequent reports about how the food grains that were distributed amongst the poor people were not reaching them because of this lack of identification based data, wherein the beneficiaries were not identified properly and the grains did not reach them. On the other end of the spectrum, this year there was a significant rise in the high net worth individuals, especially amongst software driven companies. So, cloud based technologies and software companies where digital services were provided in the time of the pandemic have grown significantly. Take, for example, the growth of Zoom. There are a lot of services like Zoom, but the right moment and right opportunity was captured by Zoom. Similarly, we can think of Paytm during demonetization. So, this crisis has actually accentuated the differences between haves and have nots. In this context, the measures that the government has taken to support the MNCs with the hope that they'll create enough jobs is a good measure in the long term. But if you take a look at the taxation policy as such, we also have to take care of the poor. In this time, when the companies are growing multifold, the government, according to the view of the author, should tax them more. This is because the reason is simple. If we don't take care of our population, this is going to have a long lasting impact on our economy, because inequalities are definitely not good for any societies. This is where crime and revolutions breed. Now, if you take a look at how the companies that have benefited from this pandemic grew, their wealth grew multifold. It is not that they're commensurately creating enough number of jobs. So, in those kind of companies, if they're not creating jobs, either the taxation should be linked to the number of jobs that they're creating, or it should either be driven by a higher GST. But again, the argument about increasing the GST for a lot of these items is ultimately the consumer will be bearing the burden. So, direct taxation in the form of corporate tax, etc., should be increased to this MNCs. That is the basic logic behind this. If you understand how IT works, IT Act, this was framed way back in 1961. It has not been revamped ever since. Today, we have multiple agencies and multiple sources of revenues for people. Yet, we are still stuck in this archaic law of 1961 with minimal amendments. So, this budget is an opportunity to relook at this and probably come out with a formidable IT Act. That is the gist of this article.